Hello everyone, first test, can you hear me? Hello everyone, today we will be watching the launch of an Ariane 5 designated VA236, which is simply the counted up number. Now, this launch is basically just a commercial launch of two communication satellites, so nothing classified this time. The two communication satellites will be set up on slightly different geostationary transfer orbits with a inclination of 4 degrees. Now what's especially interesting for me about this launch is that this is one of the rockets I got to see live being assembled at a tour at Airbus Defence and Space in Bremen back in fall 2016. At an excursion there with university. Unfortunately, I was not allowed to take any pictures inside the gigantic clean room, which essentially looked like this thing. It was actually pretty much this room. This picture is a press release from much earlier, back when the automated transfer vehicle was assembled there. And you can see that in the back, if you look behind the service module being assembled slightly to the right, there's a glass window that visitors can look through, but are not allowed to take photos unless at very special occasions with a with like an official press license. But all I got to take was a few images of arriving at the site and leaving there, and they have a huge Ariane 5 mock-up in the garden, essentially. Uh, you can see here, this is when you arrive there, they have huge Ariane 5 mock-up, a huge Ariane 4 mock-up, ATV mock-up. That's not really that interesting compared to what you get to see inside, but well, you aren't allowed to take any pictures inside, so that's all I could take there. Now, when I finish studying, I hope that someday I can work at Airbus Defence and Space, where they actually develop the main engines for the Ariane 5 and also the main concept and structure, and where they are currently testing and developing on the Ariane 6. And who knows what they will be doing by then. Of course, Airbus Defence and Space also does other interesting things, like they built the Rosetta probe before then handing it over to ESA for operation. They also build all sorts of satellites and other technology involved in spaceflight. They supply parts for the Orion spaceship, and they also built the ATV and a module for the ISS. So you can hardly tell what they're going to be doing in 10 years or so. Now, if we switch to the actual live stream, there's not really much going on yet besides a countdown, but it's getting closer and closer to the start of the actual live stream. Until then, there's not really much other to see than a still image of an Ariane 5 launch. The launch window is going to begin in 20 minutes or 19 minutes if you want to be exact. Now, the launch window goes on for 2 hours, but according to their press release, they're going to launch as early as possible within that launch window, so most likely in 19 minutes. Now, in comparison to the Falcon 9 launch a few days ago, the Ariane 5 is in a somewhat stark contrast. That is if you look at the Ariane 5 main engine or the Ariane 5 overall structure, it is very optimized for a single-use rocket. That is, the structure is very well optimized, very lightweight, but not built to be reused, which it can't be anyways because it falls into the ocean. But for example, the main engine is one of the most efficient, one of the highest ISP engines that is currently in use in any currently operational space rocket. But the downside of this is, of course, that it is built to the very limit of what it can handle, and during engine tests you can see that when it nears the end, or when it ends its burn time, it is tested for the intended burn time in the actual rocket, and after that intended burn time it is no longer really ready for operation.
developed our knowledge of these since the inception of these programs, as well as moons, 52 instead of 53. And I'd like to leave you with this launch, and I'd like to wish you a very, very pleasant evening indeed. Thank you.
Greetings to all of our friends around the world, and welcome once again to Kourou, the home of the Ariane family, for today's launch of Ariane space flight number 236. We're glad you could be here. We're launching 2 satellites tonight, one for some old friends in South Korea, another for some old friends as well as some new friends in Brazil. All the action is about to begin. To get us underway, some opening words first from Ariane Space Chief Executive Stefan Israel.
So, ladies and gentlemen, dear partners, dear customers, Ariane Space is delighted to welcome you from the Guyana Space Center for this new Ariane 5 mission, the second of the year with our heavyweight vehicle. In a few minutes, we are going to launch 2 key satellites for our customers and partners. SGDC for Visiona Tecnologia Espacial SA on behalf of the Brazilian telecom operator Telebras and the Brazilian government. Koreasat 7 for the Korean operator Koreasat. Both satellites have been manufactured by our long-lasting partner Thales Alenia Space. Thanks to Visiona Tecnologia Espacial and thanks to Koreasat for your trust. As you can see on the control screen behind me, Ariane 5 is on the launch pad after having been transferred yesterday. The operations linked to the final countdown are in progress. Due to a shift in the fueling operations, we are from now in a position to launch at 5:55 p.m., the time of the opening of the launch window, which will last 2 hours and 24 minutes. This new launch window opening will, of course, be subject to the changing weather conditions, but the weather is good and we have green conditions, so we could launch at the beginning of the launch window. The overall performance to GTO required for this launch is 10 tons, 289 kilos. As you know, the liftoff occurs 7 seconds after the H0 at the ignition of the boosters. Ariane 5 will then head towards the east to separate the satellites on an elliptical orbit inclined at 4 degrees with respect to the equatorial plane. The perigee altitude will be 250 kilometers, and the apogee altitude will be 35,926 kilometers. SGDC will separate first 28 minutes and 11 seconds after liftoff. Then Koreasat 7 will separate 8 minutes and 35 seconds later. We will resume the antenna in 20-25 minutes. We can leave this launch together. Go Ariane 5, go SGDC and Koreasat 7, and of course, enjoy the flight.
Stefan, many thanks. You heard Stefan say that due to fueling conditions, a shift in the fueling conditions, we have a new launch window opening it at 17:55 local. That's the same time in Brazil. That's 22:55, I think, in Paris. 5:55 a.m. in Seoul. So we're going to cut away now. We're going to let you enjoy the moments that we're going to give you about 20 minutes. I'm going to go to the broadcast booth and set up shop. We're going to resume the broadcast, as Stefan said, 20 minutes roughly, 15 or 20 minutes before 17:55 local. Until then, you have a few minutes. Enjoy it. Sit tight. We'll be back. Thank you.
À tous de DDO, suite au retour vers ensemble de lancement, le nouvel âge revisé est à 20h55 TU. Le TD redémarrera à 20h48 TU.
We see the countdown is green again, though still not counting down at this point. It's still in a planned halt, but it's green as the unplanned halt has ended and basically gone over into the planned hold. Fueling operations have been shifted. Now it's a bit weird because up to a few seconds, minutes ago, we could see the text say that broadcast would resume at 8:40 UTC, which is 7 minutes ago, but okay.
À tous de DDO, rouge, ensemble de lancement.
Well, now the countdown is red again. We don't know exactly what is going on. It might take a bit longer, but from experience with Ariane launches, as a rough estimate, I would expect a launch within the next 30 minutes, though without exact insights, it's hard to tell exactly. Now the launch window is getting closer to the halfway point, with the remaining regular countdown operations and the remaining time on the countdown clock. We're getting closer to the half of the launch window. We still don't know exactly what's going on. All that's been released is that there's a problem with fuel loading, with LH2 loading. Now, we all know liquid hydrogen is really hard to handle. It might take a while. Without further insight, it's hard to tell exactly. Some launch times have been speculated for in about half an hour. And really, after that, if it's then again halted, then it will probably be scrapped for a later date.
À tous de DDO, suite au retour vers ensemble de lancement, le nouvel âge revisé est 21h50 TU. Le temps du compte redémarrera à 21h43 TU. À tous de DDO, attention pour la reprise du temps des comptes.
The timer is now green again, indicating that
Top,
loading
début de la
issues
séquence finale lanceur.
have apparently
Le
been
nouvel âge
fixed.
revisé est 21h50 TU.
We still have 1 hour and 20 minutes remaining in the launch window, counting with the
Wait.
with the remaining countdown timers. So even in event of another halt, we might still launch today, but right now the clock is counting down well.
After 4 weeks of assembly and control activities in the build, the launcher integration building, the launcher was transferred to the BAF final assembly building to host both payloads for launch. The VA236 mission is launched 2 spacecrafts built by the same prime contractor, Thales, based in Cannes, La Boca. The 2 satellites, SGDC and Koreasat 7, were loaded on the same Antonov and arrived on Tuesday, the 14th of February, the launch date of VA235, at 1:50 a.m. in order to be in the S5 area 6 hours before the expected H0. Both preparation campaigns were conducted in parallel in the S5C South and North buildings, pooling the manufacturer's resources for the benefit of the 2 satellites. The fit checks were performed after transfer to the fueling S5A and S5B buildings and confirmed the compatibility of the satellites with the adapters. After the nominal fielding operations, both satellites were declared ready to start a combined operations plan on Friday, the 3rd of March. SGDC was trapped on its adapter on Monday, the 6th of March, followed the day after by Koreasat 7. The countdown activities started this morning at 6 a.m. The launch area is completely evacuated from H0-7. Then we may proceed with the inerting of the area and the propellant filling operations.
As you can see, we are back. Joshua Jampol here. Sorry you had to wait, and thanks for being patient through all the red. We're going to move to a description of the launch vehicle. You may not be familiar with Ariane 5. There are 2 versions. We're using the one that stands 54 meters tall tonight. She is in 2 parts, a lower composite and an upper one. They call the lower including the main stage and the boosters, and the upper a single engine and the satellites that you can see there. When we get off the ground, we will describe each in turn as it is functioning. The passengers, SGDC, the heavier one in the upper berth, will be separated first, and Koreasat 7, the lighter passenger, at plus 36 minutes after liftoff. The green status panels on the right are a real-time summary of all the launch activities here in the space bays. We check them before lifting off. We go only when the satellites launcher and the base are ready, and not before. We're coming to you live from Jupiter, the Jupiter Mission Control Building, but another place that's busy tonight is the launch zone, about 15 kilometers away. That's where the launch management teams are working under the direction of the launch operations manager, Rafael Breda, tonight. Right now, the 2 teams are working up there. One is responsible for the ground operations, the other for the readiness of the vehicle. The launch site operations manager heads up one group, and he coordinates with mission control for final authorization to launch. In all, about 100 people hard at work up there, going over the final checks and verifications on all parts of Ariane's launch system, because the synchronized sequence is the automatic sequence, the final moments of the final countdown. It's the tip of the iceberg. It's a complex series of operations running right down to liftoff, gradually letting the launcher become autonomous, I should say. So what's happening is power is passing from the ground, which controls everything now, to the 2 onboard computers, which will control everything afterward. During the 7 minutes, there are 2 computers on the ground, one monitoring the fluids and the other the electrical systems, and they're located in the launch management zone that we just saw. They checked out the hundreds and hundreds of values and pressures and parameters. This split screen image shows the propellant feeder arms. In the middle of the launcher, we'll pull back in a minute and get a better look. Liquid hydrogen on the left, liquid oxygen on the right. What are they doing? They're putting propellant into the upper stage tanks, and you'll see the arms pull back at -5 seconds before ignition. There they are. In the middle of your screen, the yellow bar is going from the gantry into the upper stage. It's one of the last things you'll see, and we just like to mention it so you can look out for it. A minute and a half to go, and the guests and the VIPs here in Jupiter are making their ways out to the 2 terraces on either side of Jupiter, and giving them a wonderful view right onto the launch pad. If you haven't come down here for a launch, I urge you to do so.
À tous de DDO, attention pour moins 1 minute.
The DDO is going to call out the 1 minute mark
and we'll be into the final 60 seconds.
Top, A0 moins 1 minute.
There we are. Gives us a chance to say hi to all our friends in Brazil at Visiona, at São José dos Campos, and at the Ministry of Defense in Brasilia. I'm sorry if I had trouble with the pronunciation there. I've been told more than once this week, and my Portuguese is terrible, but I'm doing my best. Sorry about that. Hi also to our friends at Koreasat in Seoul, to the Thales Alenia teams in Cannes, to our industrial partners ECA and Kines, and all of you following on the internet. We hope you enjoy it. We're going to cut away and let you listen to the DDO as he calls out the final seconds. Watch for the cryo arms to open at -5.
Now you can only see very little cryo vapor on the Ariane
Atout de
5.
DDO, attention pour les décomptes finales.
That's because most of the thrust comes from the SOBs.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage Vulcain. Allumage EAP, décollage.
Now, tell me truthfully, was that worth the wait or not? Ariane 5 beginning her mission, lifting off beautifully from the ground here in French Guiana with a lot of fire. Beginning her mission, the 4th for Ariane Space this year, with her 2 new satellites for different regions, for Latin America and for Asia. Making her way up through the clouds, which have passed over us, giving us a great
Les paramètres à bord sont normaux.
DDO says everything is well on board. The 2 boosters are providing 99.0% of the thrust, propelling the launcher along her trajectory at an ever higher velocity. 775 tons at liftoff. That's the total mass. She's burning 5 tons of fuel every second, 2.5 tons in each booster, and another 300 kilos in the core stage. Ariane 5 is now following the
La propulsion est normale.
in the onboard computer, which gives all the orders. The DDO says everything is fine on board. We're in the first of 4 flight phases. We'll describe each in turn so you can follow Ariane as she heads east across the Atlantic. Right now, the first flight phase, the single core stage engine and the boosters are burning. Boosters going to burn for another 20-25 seconds.
Tous les paramètres à
They
bord
are
sont normaux.
extinguished, and with the good viewing conditions, you'll be able to see those boosters flame out and even probably fall back from the launch vehicle. So get ready for that. That's quite a sight in about 20 seconds. We're 15 kilometers from the launch pad here in Jupiter, but even here you can feel the sensation of liftoff. And at about 1 minute and 30 seconds after launch, delayed, the delayed sound comes over here. There is the flame out of the boosters.
Séparation des étages d'accélération à poudre.
And the DDO has confirmed it. You can see on either side there's a single point of light in the middle. That's the launcher making her way eastward. On either side you can see the flamed out boosters trailing a little smoke. Lovely sight, and in another minute we may, if we're lucky, be able to see the extinction of the fairing. That'll be nice. That'll make another couple of points of light. The 2 boosters fall 500 kilometers from shore in a protected area. What that looks like is this. There's another booster on the left of the vehicle out of camera range.
La trajectoire est normale.
At the bottom of your screen, on the left our altitude, on the right our speed. You can see that in 2 minutes, Ariane has already hit a speed of over 2 kilometers per second. The speed we need to inject a satellite is roughly 9 kilometers per second. So keep your eyes on the numbers. When we get near the region
Séparation
of
de la
9
coiffe.
kilometers, you'll know we're getting close to separation. The DDO has called out separation of the fairing, and you can see that up there. Another 2 points of light. What that looks like from the vehicle point of view, that's 1/2 on the left, another half falling out of camera range on the right. We can separate the fairing now, revealing, as you can see on the top, our first satellite, Brazilian satellite. We can separate the fairing because we're out of the dense layers of the atmosphere. over 100 kilometers up. There's neither friction nor heating, which could disturb the passengers. Once a year, a launch is dedicated to a town that's part of the Ariane Cities group. Tonight, Lampoldshausen.
Whoever wants to present the world from this perspective was most probably given the propulsion for that in Lampoldshausen. Lampoldshausen, as a part of the municipality of Harthausen, is situated in the middle of Europe, in Heilbronner Land, surrounded by a beautiful cultural landscape, high-tech and space-tech included. The Space Center Lampoldshausen is a well-known brand in space technology. Unique in Europe are the test stands, where propulsion systems are partly tested almost under flight conditions.
We are very proud that the Space Center Lampoldshausen is situated in the municipality of Harthausen. Without the Space Center Lampoldshausen, Ariane 5 couldn't launch, and most of the satellite wouldn't have propulsion. Furthermore, DLR is a very important partner of the Ariane program. Due to its huge competence in fluid propulsion, DLR is prepared to test and qualify the propulsion of the upcoming Ariane 6. So, all in all, the Space Center Lampoldshausen is very important for Harthausen and the Heilbronner Land.
And Heilbronner Land has a lot more to offer. The fascinating possibilities in the district of Heilbronn make it perfect for economy and research. Here is the developing center of Bosch, a world enterprise which has thousands of engineers. The region's biggest employer is Audi, a German company that produces luxury cars. Over 16,000 people work there. By the way, there is a good partnership between the industry in the Heilbronner Land and the Space Center Lampoldshausen to support the United Space in Europe.
With the boosters gone, we're in the second powered flight phase. The single engine in the core stage is burning now. Our speed is important at this moment, and that's the role of the main stage. Its cryogenic propellant system, that's very cold fuel, is not only highly efficient, but can provide a push that can last a long time. There are two different propulsion systems on the Ariane 5, cryogenics as used in this main stage. Cryogenics in the main stage, more efficient than the solid propellant which was used in the boosters. Basically, solids get us off the ground, away from the pull of the Earth, basic power. Cryogenics are for more precision orienting of the vehicle. And of course, they also allow a stage to be reignited, but that's in the other version of Ariane where we're not using tonight. Ariane 5 is the heavy lift launcher. Remember, the other two members of the family, Soyuz for middle-sized payloads, 2 and 3 tons, and Vega, the light lift vehicle for missions of, well, roughly 1 ton. On the left is the long white tube. That's the lower stage. And above that, a white band, vehicle equipment bay where the computers are. There's a black bell-shaped structure, which is the Silda, which carries the second satellite. This is the first of what may be several shots of the launch and replay. You can look at those moments. Again, Ariane 5 took off from the pad just close to 8 minutes ago. We have cameras at several of the half-dozen observation sites that are stationed across the base, and they furnish us with shots from different angles. Here's another one, and we should have even more later on.
We got one
I believe the DDO has confirmed, yes he has, the acquisition of the Ariane signal by our first downrange tracking station. That's at Natal, across the border in Brazil. All of Ariane's trajectory has been designed to be followed from the ground. Another replay. The launcher is sending radar and telemetry back and a network of stations, including Natal, takes the signal. We wanted to say hello to our friends at Natal, run by the Brazilian Armed Forces, because since the very first launch of Ariane in the program, Christmas Eve 1979, they have been part of every launch that's gone east of every one of our 3 Ariane members of our Ariane family. So nice work.
Extinction de l'étage principal cryotechnique.
DDO has
Séparation
called that
EPC.
extinction of the lower stage, and you'll see separation of the lower stage in the animation, and the ignition of the upper stage. All these three commands, extinction and separation of the lower stage, ignition of the upper stage, coming on time,
Allumage de l'étage supérieur cryotechnique.
about 172 kilometers up. These orders are given by the onboard computer in about 13 seconds. The lower stage, you will see in a moment, will fall back into the Pacific off the
Perte
coast
normale de la télémesure
of
lanceur.
Peru. We're now into the third powered flight phase, the single upper stage engine that'll burn until plus 2454, 16 minutes, roughly. With separation of the lower stage, Ariane 5 has used up all of the 175
La
tons of
propulsion est
pellet
nominale.
in that stage, another 14 tons of dry mass in the lower stage. Remember, the vehicle lost 240 tons of fuel in each booster before, so most of her weight, you can guess, is fuel, 90% in fact. With ignition of the upper stage, we can begin to focus on the satellites. SGDC is up first.
Buscando prover internet a 100% do território nacional, garantir a segurança das comunicações e fortalecer a indústria espacial brasileira, o governo federal desenvolveu o programa Satélite Geoestacionário de Defesa e Comunicações Estratégicas. Moderno e com alta capacidade de conexão, o SGDC vai alcançar os lugares em que a rede de fibra ótica não chega, atendendo às necessidades do Plano Nacional de Banda Larga, propiciando inclusão social e promovendo o desenvolvimento socioeconômico do Brasil.
Com o lançamento do satélite geoestacionário, estamos dando mais um passo importante visando esses objetivos, oferecendo cobertura a todo o território nacional. O satélite geoestacionário terá 70% de sua faixa de frequência disponível para ampliar o alcance e qualidade da banda larga, o que também dimensiona como esse projeto do governo federal é estratégico.
O satélite geoestacionário, operado e controlado por brasileiros, vai atuar também no âmbito militar, por meio da banda X, provendo comunicações seguras para o Sistema de Defesa Nacional e para as comunicações estratégicas do governo, assegurando soberania com canais de transmissão exclusivos e protegidos.
Além de assegurar independência e soberania nas comunicações de defesa e militares, o SGDC, o nosso satélite geoestacionário, ele representou uma grande transferência de tecnologia, capacitação de profissionais e será operado em 2 centros, um em Brasília e outro no Rio de Janeiro, sob total controle dos brasileiros e do Brasil.
Compete à Telebrás, que tem a missão de conectar os locais mais distantes com internet de qualidade, a operação civil do SGDC, que utilizará a alta capacidade da banda KA para ampliar a oferta de banda larga no país.
A partir de agora, teremos mais defesa para o Brasil, mais segurança para as informações e poderemos levar a internet em 100% do nosso território brasileiro. Teremos mais inclusão social, mais inclusão digital e seremos mais competitivos.
As comunicações seguras serão controladas pela Força Aérea Brasileira, responsável pela operação e monitoramento do SGDC, que expandirá a capacidade operacional das Forças Armadas.
A Força Aérea, através do seu Centro de Operações Espaciais em Brasília, é responsável pela operação do SGDC, que será feito por militares das 3 Forças Armadas. Assim, garantimos o suporte e segurança para o sistema de comunicações militares por satélite, expandindo a capacidade operacional 24 horas por dia e 7 dias por semana.
O programa foi desenvolvido pela Visiona Tecnologia Espacial, uma empresa dos grupos Embraer e Telebrás, responsável pela integração completa do sistema, garantindo a comunicação entre todos os seus componentes.
Com o lançamento do satélite, a Visiona demonstra, além de sua capacidade técnica e de engenharia espacial, a capacidade em gestão de sistemas complexos, como foi este projeto estratégico para o Brasil. Todos os requisitos estabelecidos pelo governo foram cumpridos ou mesmo superados, com otimização de seu desempenho e garantindo a qualidade final da solução.
O SGDC alavancou a indústria espacial brasileira, agora inserida na cadeia global de fornecedores, por meio de um intenso programa de transferência e absorção de tecnologias de ponta. propiciado por sua fabricante francesa, a Thales Alenia, capacitando o Brasil para novos projetos espaciais.
SGDC is an important first step in the partnership between Thales Alenia Space and Brazil to develop its space program. Not only are we delivering a highly advanced satellite, but we have also implemented a comprehensive technology transfer to Brazilian companies. In addition, we have integrated over 30 Brazilians into our teams throughout the project to foster Brazilian space expertise.
Quando se trata desse tema, sempre é lembrada a importância da transferência de tecnologia. Ao agregar o conhecimento e a pesquisa desenvolvidos no exterior, alavancamos ainda mais o segmento. E o projeto do satélite geoestacionário, além dos benefícios para a inclusão digital e nossa defesa e soberania nacionais, também se apoia neste pilar fundamental que é a transferência de tecnologia.
O satélite geoestacionário é uma ferramenta imprescindível para o desenvolvimento da nação. Vai proporcionar a todos os brasileiros um país conectado não só com tecnologia, educação e conhecimento, mas um Brasil conectado com cidadania, igualdade e justiça. SGDC, conectividade e segurança para o Brasil.
While you were watching that film, we were picked up by our next downrange tracking station after Natal, called Ascension Island, a tiny island in the South Atlantic, 10 kilometers square, I should say, belongs to the UK.
La trajectoire est normale.
All is well on board as the DDO continues to give that information. SGDC stands for Geostationary Defense and Strategic Communications Satellite. It's the Brazilian government's first satellite, also the first for the operator, Visiona, which is a joint venture between Telebras and Embraer Defense. It's also the first to be launched by Ariane Space in a turnkey contract with its builder, Thales Alenia Space. We'll have more on Thales Alenia in a moment. Brazil's government has three objectives with the program: to reduce the digital divide in Brazil by furnishing high-quality net services across the country, provide the Defense Department with a secure means for strategic communications, and to provide Brazil's space industry with the key technologies that'll let it play a bigger role in future space programs. SGDC will cover South America, particularly Brazil, and more particularly the country's remote villages with net and broadband. That's roughly 70% of its use, the other 30% for military communications. A word now on SGDC and its close relationship with Ariane Space.
Unlike other satellites in operation over Brazilian territory today, SGDC was carefully designed to cover all regions inside Brazilian territory with the same quality of signal. Telebras understands that SGDC is a great opportunity to allow the reduction of existing differences in the offer of wideband internet access with good quality between the population living near the great cities and those living in remote areas.
Mario, you are the Satellite Mission Director for SGDC program. Could you please describe the main features of the spacecraft and explain us the main services and applications which will be deployed for your customers?
Brazil has continental dimensions. SGDC was built considering a well-defined set of requirements derived from the country needs in terms of communications. In this way, the satellite, due to the coverage capability in Ka band, will assure digital connectivity to all Brazilians, providing broadband services all around the country. Considering the X-band capability, SGDC will maintain and enhance the nation's sovereignty and defense capability. Besides the contractual terms, the relationship among Visiona, Thales Alenia, and Ariane Space, all the teams working together, was extremely close and direct. This led to a very friendly and productive environment. All points were discussed clearly and in deep detail as needed.
Following this launch, which will be the SGDC benefits for Visiona?
Visiona will consolidate its capability as a space systems integrator, being able to perform the role of the only Brazilian prime contractor organizing the national industry supply chain. The TAP, Technology Absorption Program, allowed us to update and consolidate the knowledge in all the disciplines required for satellite-based systems development. In addition, considering the technology transfer program for elected national companies, it will be possible on the incoming programs to significantly increase the Brazilian content from equipment, subsystems, and AIT, assembly, integration, and tests.
6 minutes left in the upper stage burn. Cutoff, remember, due at 24:54. If you just joined us, we're launching 2 new telecom satellites, SGDC for Brazil, Koreasat 7 for South Korea. And we have now been picked up by our next downrange tracking station in Libreville on the west coast of Africa in
La trajectoire est normale.
Till Ariane 3, the last downrange station was in Ivory Coast, and for Ariane 4 we needed a new station farther east. So set went up 40 kilometers from Libreville, opened in 1986, and receives telemetry for about a quarter of an hour. Some numbers. Today's mission is the 287th for the Ariane space family. We're delivering our 555th and 56th satellite since the program began back in 1979. Ariane Space has launched 114 satellites for operators based in the Americas, 21 for Latin America, 93 for North America. The company has 93% of the market share in the region, has 100% of the market share in Brazil,
La trajectoire est normale.
which is not bad. Ariane has launched all the nation's commercial telecom satellites, going back to BrazilSat 1 in 1985. And in the Asia-Pacific, Ariane Space has launched 77 satellites for local operators. Moving to our second passenger now, a short film on Koreasat 7.
Since 1970, KTSat has provided satellite services in Korea. With the launch of Koreasat 7 in 2017, KTSat will start global services beyond Korea. Koreasat 7, located at 116 degrees east, provides beam coverage in Southeast Asian markets. With an even broader coverage and services, we will best serve our customers.
La trajectoire est normale. Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux.
We will give you more than you need. KTSat.
Acquisition de la télémesure lanceur pour la station de Malindi au Kenya.
Just a minute to go in the upper stage burn as Ariane 5 continues to perform flawlessly. During the Koreasat film, we were picked up by our last downrange tracking station on the east coast of Africa in Kenya, called Malindi. So you see Ariane crossing Africa in 5 minutes. One interesting note, there's been a slight loss of telemetry signal today. It's quite normal, doesn't cause any problems. Sometimes the ground stations suffer a brief blackout due to the launcher's position. Tonight there was
Le
a brief
pilotage est
loss
calme,
of
la
signal
trajectoire est nominale.
between Galio, the station here in Kourou, and Natal, 63 seconds. Another between Ascension Island and the Libreville station of about half a minute. We don't lose the information. It's stored on board. Inside the vehicle equipment bay is something called the Central Telemetry Unit, and inside that is another thing called the mass memory. The exact times and lengths of the signal loss are programmed into this unit, and the unit itself is programmed to record the data it would normally be sending down to the stations on the ground. It's likewise programmed to start sending the data to the stations when the signal comes back.
La propulsion est normale.
We're waiting for the confirmation of the extinction of the upper stage, and we'll be through with our powered flight phases. On the left is our upper passenger. The black bell-shaped structure in the middle is called the Silda. That's the carrying structure for the second satellite. Koreasat is underneath. The white band is the vehicle equipment bay, and the engine, which you see is burning. Another few seconds to go, and the DDO will call out confirmation of the cutoff. You see that happening on the animation. Right on time at about 640 kilometers up. Ariane 5 has reached her maximum speed. Take a look at the bottom right. You'll see the speeds start to drop as we move into the new coasting phase once the power has been shut down. In 3 minutes, by the time we separate the Brazilian satellite, her speed will be 8.9 kilometers per second. Thales Alenia Space up next.
We designed Koreasat 7 to give our customer, KTSat, better throughput and wider coverage over Korea and South Asia. This is the third telecommunications satellite we have manufactured for KTSat, and we are particularly proud of the deep relationship we have built over more than 14 years between us. Koreasat 7 is based on our upgraded version of a Spacebus 4000 B2. This version is perfectly suited to the Ariane 5 lower position. It offers larger capacity and more power in a lighter spacecraft, providing KTSat a very powerful telecommunications mission. Thanks to the great collaboration between all our team, we have reached a mission performance which exceeds indeed requirements. It will enable a full range of video and data applications, such as DTH, broadcast services, government communications, and VSAT networks. Moreover, it will support increasing demand thanks to its steerable Ka band beam. In fact, today is important for Thales Alenia Space and Ariane Espace, because we build both satellites being launched today. And this is the second time in the history 2 of our satellites are traveling together on board Ariane 5. I want to thank everyone involved in this project, and we all wish KTSat, Katie, and your customers the very best for Koreasat 7.
The mission this evening carrying the 147th and 48th satellites built by Thales Alenia Space or its predecessors. We're coming up on separation of our first passenger, SGDC. Always a moment of high concentration. The teams have gone through all these procedures before, but it does call for tremendous focus. All eyes are on the computer screens, all ears on the phones, awaiting confirmation of satellite separation.
Séparation SGDC.
And you heard the first good news. Successful delivery of our first passenger, geostationary defense and strategic communications satellite. At 1,100 kilometers up, some smiling faces behind the Brazilian flag. You notice the people in the hall here holding their applause becomes somewhat of a tradition on double launches. The mission's not over. Ariane 5 still has to separate our lower passenger, Koreasat 7, coming up in about 8 minutes. Now that the Brazilian satellite is separated, here are its first post-separation maneuvers: telemetry acquisition in about 10 minutes, partial solar array deployment in about 3 hours, sun acquisition in about 2.5 hours. There will be 3 motor firings on day 2, day 4, and day 5, and then total solar array deployment and antenna deployment on the 6th day out, and in-orbit testing beginning on the 13th of May. Up next is the SILDA separation. Remember, the SILDA is that black bell-shaped structure that lets us carry a second passenger, and you'll hear the DDO call out that milestone in about 20 seconds. Our second passenger tonight, Koreasat 7. Ariane 5 is known for her double launches. She's the only commercial launcher capable of lifting 2 heavy satellites. We've used the SILDA, or an earlier version of it, at least 120 times that I can recall. 7 versions of it.
Séparation du système séparation du SILDA.
And there you see the separation of the SILDA, pushed away by the mothership by a series of springs. I think there are 8, maybe 12 of them, revealing to the elements Koreasat 7. You see the blue and gold and black box. Her separation coming up shortly. I remember one recent launch. So often have they used the double launches. There was a recent launch, Flight 228, I think it was. It was a solo launch for an Intelsat. The crews were so used to doing double launches that all the scaffolding and cables and electric and fluid lines that they used for solo launches were packed away in the final assembly building. So the combined operations for that mission needed an extra day to find them and get them out. Another place where people are hard at work tonight, the CVI, that's the Quick Look Telemetry Display Center. Now these teams have all the means for receiving and processing and storing and analyzing all the data coming in from the ground stations along Ariane's flight path. Remember, we've been calling them out for you, Natal and Ascension Island and the African stations. Right now, these teams are following and analyzing all the key flight data. They're reporting that flight data status back here to us in Jupiter. That's why Jupiter is known as the nerve center, because everything comes in here. And later, these data will be treated to reconstitute the entire mission. The flight will be recreated in figures and analyzed again. We are in what they call a coasting phase. There are other names for it once the power shuts down. A free-flying phase. Ballistics phase is another one. We mentioned the upper stage has a dual role, propulsion and ballistic. With the extinction of the upper stage, her propulsion part is over, and she's carrying out her second role now. We're coasting. That doesn't mean nothing's happening, because as you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, well, you saw it for a moment there, the composite being spun up. These are these maneuvers we'll talk about in just a moment. Our final film, a look at Koreasat and Ariane.
Hoon, you are the satellite mission director for Koreasat 7. Could you please describe the main features of the spacecraft and explain us the main services and applications which will be deployed for your own customers?
Koreasat 7 was built by Thales Alenia Space using a Spacebus 4000 B2 platform. The mass of liftoff is around 3680 kilograms. That means more than 21 years of fuel lifetime. Koreasat 7 will provide a full range of video and data applications, such as direct-to-home broadcasting, internet access, and VSAT service, with mainly KU band transponders and its added Ka band steerable beam. Koreasat 7 will be positioned at 116° east and will provide improved satellite service over the wider coverage area, including Korea, Philippines, Indonesia, Indochina, and up to India. This is my second time to attend the launch campaign. I had also been attended the launch campaign for Koreasat 6 in 2010. One different thing for me was the signing ceremony on the pairing. This event was not be during the Koreasat 6 launch campaign. This event was good and will remain in my memory for a long time.
KT-SAT, Thales Alenia Space and Ariane Space teams have been working closely to achieve Koreasat 7 flight worthiness in the frame of this mission and readiness for launch. Could you give us your impression regarding those relationships and what they bring to the realization of this mission?
I think the important things of teamwork are trying to understand each party's situation and well communication. In terms of that, we were a great team based on our good relationship. Eventually, this kind of good teamwork will make our mission to success.
Following the layup and IoT phase leading to the operational phase, what are the main steps to achieve a complete deployment of the service over Asia? And tell us how this will benefit for KT-SAT.
Koreasat 7 is the first satellite which is extended coverage nearly all over Asia as KT-SAT's own satellite. This is absolutely big challenge to KT-SAT, but we also believe that there are still many chances over the Koreasat 7 service areas with emerging markets. KT-SAT has already been focusing on excavation of new customers with its own capability. Doing this way, KT-SAT will leap ahead as a global satellite service provider.
Koreasat 7, the third satellite launched by Ariane Space for KT-SAT. After Koreasat 3 and Koreasat 6, KT-SAT, Korea's top telecommunications and media services provider. Ariane Space is also a major partner in the Korean government space program. We launched KitSat 1A in 1992, then KitSat 2, also known as KitSat B, I believe, in the following year. 2010, we launched COMS, Weather and Oceanography Satellite, for KARI, K-A-R-I, the Korean Aerospace Research Institute. Just a few seconds to go until separation of Koreasat 7. About a half a minute. Since 1992, Ariane Space has launched 1/4 of all Korean satellites, 3 institutional satellites for KARI, the research outfit, and 2 commercial missions for KT-SAT. So with today's launch, Ariane Space orbiting a total of 6 satellites for the nation of South Korea. We're waiting for confirmation of separation of our second and final passenger, Koreasat 7, and you'll hear the DDO call out that moment. Again, high concentration among the teams here. The mood here in Jupiter is, as it was for SGDC, I would say very focused.
Séparation Koreasat 7.
So the final good news, you can hear the applause and you can see the pictures, the happy faces, the hugs and the smiles all around here in Jupiter as Ariane 5 has delivered her second passenger, Koreasat 7, out over the Indian Ocean. So for those very focused and concentrated moments just a minute ago, you can see the change here in Jupiter, very buoyant all across the Space Center and at all the points and posts where people are following the launcher and the satellite. Work is just beginning, or soon will be, at the different ground stations for both SGDC and Koreasat, and at the other sites around the world where the satellite's first maneuvers are being monitored. While we're waiting for the post-launch speeches, and I'll give you the names of the people who will be addressing the crowd here. Koreasat 7's first operations will be telemetry acquisition in about 11 minutes, sun acquisition in about 2.5 hours, partial solar array deployment in 3 hours, motor firings on days 1, 3, and 5, antenna and total solar array deployment on day 5, and arrival at the in-orbit testing window on the 12th of May. As the handshakes and hugs and congratulations continue here in Jupiter, the podium is being set up for our speakers. They will include Stefan Israel of Ariane Space, Eduardo Bonini of Visiona, Juan Sikhan of KTSat, and Romy Letuc of Thales Alenia Space. Some of these speakers are seated on the VIP side, our side here of Jupiter, but Stefan Israel has been working in the fishbowl, and he is making his way to the podium, and his will be the next voice you hear. Stefan Israel, you have the floor.
Bien, Monsieur le Préfet, Madame la députée de Guyane et présidente du groupe des parlementaires pour l'espace, Monsieur le maire de Kourou,
dear Mayor of Kourou,
distinguished guests, dear customers, Ariane Space is delighted to announce that SGDC and Koreasat 7 have been separated as planned on the targeted geostationary transfer orbit. For the second time this year and the 78th time in a row, success is here for Ariane 5. Well done. Congratulations to all. On social media, we had many Star Wars geeks telling us, "May the Fourth be with you." And so it has. The Fourth was with us all the way. Tonight's Ariane 5 serve two special customers and countries for Ariane Space. With the launch of SGDC in upper position, Visiona Tecnologia Espacial has entrusted its first ever satellite to Ariane Space on behalf of the Brazilian telecom operator Telebras and for Brazilian governmental needs. Welcome to the Ariane Space family. I'd like to express my profound gratitude to Visiona CEO Eduardo Bonini, who is with us tonight, and Telebras President Antonio Los, who is watching this launch from Brasilia. Let me also highlight the presence with us of two representatives from the Ministry of Science, Technology, Innovations and Communications in Brasilia, Mr. Arthur Coimbra, Director of Broadband, and Mr. Maximiliano Martinao, Secretary for Information Technology Policy. We are very proud to have delivered for Brazil, a region where Ariane Space has been a major player since the launch of Brasilsat A1 in 1985. Indeed, 100%, it will be difficult to do better, of Brazilian geosatellites have been launched by Ariane Space. Another special partner, KTSat, has entrusted its third satellite to Ariane Space since our launch of Koreasat 3 in 1999. This new joint success
Now the launch was a success. Now the speeches begin, which usually takes up quite a while in an Ariane launch stream. I will post recordings of those speeches later, but for now I will play back some replays of the launch, and this was probably one of the best instances of ground coverage, of some of the best footage from ground ever seen of an Ariane 5, as the weather was rather good and we could see even the fairing separation and the booster separation quite well. I'll be preparing the replay for a few moments now. We are now seeing a replay of the launch coverage. I will maybe jump to the most stunning views. Now, as I commented back then, the amount of cryogenic vapor you see from the fueling system is rather small, since most of the Ariane 5's thrust comes from the booster. You can see this on liftoff as the main engine ignites. The Ariane 5 is not even close to lifting off. It's when the boosters ignite that the Ariane 5 actually does lift off. This is simply mathematical optimization of rockets. It's clever to use the cheaper and less efficient fuel in the bigger first stage that is in the boosters here, although the main engine is already running on throttle setting along with them, but the main engine keeps running much longer, and it is the much more expensive and more efficient fuel and overall rocket system. Now, the Ariane 5, when compared to other rockets, it is a very lightweight and very optimized through rocket. If you compare it to the Falcon 9, for example, the Ariane 5 is very lightweight but not very sturdy. It is quite reliable, but it's very thin, and you couldn't reuse it. Even if you built some system to land it, the main engine, after its planned life, which is one launch, is has pretty much destroyed itself, because it's just built as lightweight and as efficient as possible, which means that it is built only to last just as long as it needs, plus a tiny margin of safety. And the hull of the Ariane 5 as well would probably not survive a landing. It's extremely lightweight. It actually is built to only stand with pressurized fuel tanks. The fuel tank essentially works like a balloon, and if there was no pressure in the fuel tank, you could not get an Ariane 5 to stand without it crumbling under its own weight. The fuel tank has to be pressurized with a pressure charge of helium as the fuel is drained, in order to keep it from crumbling as the fuel pressure drops. Now here we see the booster separation. Great footage of the booster separation, as weather was better than at many other Ariane space launches. Brazil's weather is always a bit tricky for people who like to watch rocket launches. It's often quite cloudy, and many Ariane space launch coverages basically end with a rocket disappearing into the clouds after 10 seconds, and the rest is telemetry data. This time we could even see the fairing separation, which is extremely rare. one of the main differences between the Falcon and the Ariane rocket designs. The Ariane is really designed to be as lightweight and efficient as possible, but although it's reliable in its single launch use, it's really not built to last any longer than it has to, whereas the Falcon rocket is heavier and less efficient in its pure rocket optimization, but it's sturdy enough to be actually reused. When you see engine testing for the Ariane 5, the main engine is tested for just as a margin of safety for a few seconds longer than it actually needs to burn to bring the Ariane 5 safely into orbit, or into the state that is halfway to orbit where the first stage separates. And after that, the main engine is very damaged, and it works, but it's so worn down that turning it on again or reigniting the first stage or the core main engine would pretty much mean that it would blow up. The boosters of the Ariane 5 had actually been recovered from the sea a few times during the first few launches with parachutes and recovery teams, but this was never intended for reused purpose, but rather just for inspection to see in what kind of state the boosters were after they had done their job, so they would know if the boosters were reliable or if the boosters were actually over-reliable and could be built more lightweight than they were. And after they had that basic information, they stopped recovering boosters from the Ariane 5. You can also kind of see the lightweight and thinness of the hull in the fairing separation. As you see, the fairing kind of wobbles at it as it is deployed, since the fairing is just built strong enough to withstand the loads of the launch when it is connected to the rocket and the other fairing half, which gives it more structural integrity. As it is deployed, it basically becomes a it's basically a big sheet of tinfoil that's bolted to tiny stringers, so it just so withstands what it has to withstand. And it's similar to an airplane hull, actually. Airplane hulls actually are not very thick. If you were to drop a tool as a mechanic on an airplane, you might have to expect that the tool basically falls right through the airplane's hull, and you probably get yourself in a lot of trouble. For aerodynamic forces or overall structural forces, where you have an engine at one end and you want to transmit the force all the way to the top, it's really the most lightweight construction to have a few stringers and basically a thin skeleton inside, and on the outside you essentially just have a very thin hull that is just there to keep the air flowing around it and not inside it. Now, with this, I am going to end today's live stream. I'm not sure if I'm going to live stream the Indian launch, which is up in 11 hours, I think, because it's gonna get a bit late, and the live streams of the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle are usually already a little bit messy, since it's usually a TV program that is kind of re-mirrored, and then remirroring that and commenting on it would just mess it up even more. But I will upload recording of that as well, and with that, thanks for watching.